Good afternoon, Abbotsford residents. I'm Mr. Pelican. I'm running for Commander-in-Chief of Abbotsford to open the city's books, forensic audits, and help Abbotsford community. But we're going to go after the organized crime that laid in Abbotsford. If there is a way I can explain the establishment in Abbotsford, I best lay it out like this. Watch the movie Mississippi Burning with Gene Hackman, and you'll know what Henry Braun was doing in Abbotsford. Henry Braun was the former mayor of Abbotsford, but set up an establishment to point jobs to his friends and him, but he took his son in front of the city, the economic development officer, and was running jobs his way. When Darren Brown started opening up the doors on the local Abbotsford residents being hurt, the attack on Councillor Mogel with the task force so Henry could win the decisions, the Chamber of Commerce, Greg Toes, the endorsements and everything. There is no use going into the Abbotsford police because I tell you, the mothers of these officers would have to regret ever giving birth of what they did to this community. Abbotsford residents and me went to the RCMP of Mission, BC, in the neighboring municipality that never looked away. They knew that what the Abbotsford Task Force and police were doing had elite politicians involved, and now they needed to cover, and they were running roughshod on the residents, and especially me, to shut my mouth as it went on social media to expose the decisions, councillors in Henry's house. You had a man that not only was the mayor, that left the scene of the city of Abbotsford, came out in his Alexis car, used the Abbotsford police gurdy-purdy to break up a protest by seniors at their homes, and my houses were damaged, which he had no business sticking his nose in anything. He should have been stuck down the toilet and flushed, but he thought he was somebody in this uniform. Abbotsford residents and myself left peacefully, and then it was going to expose Henry on the world stage because people could see the protest. And Henry came out in his Alexis car, stood on the gas, and came right for me with all witnesses and everything. Knocked me flying, left me for dead, fled from the scene of the accident, dumped his Alexis car, used Mike Sir to cover it, and then the 911 call, which was recuperated thanks to the help of the RCMP. You could hear him talking to me, stay on the scene and everything, and local residents taking me to the hospital, and Abbotsford police, Mike Sir upstairs laughing and giggling with his other investigators of how they could cover it for the rich train tycoon. It wasn't just on me, it is all the organized crime in Abbotsford and how much these people were doing and how much they covered. Then the Abbotsford police were in trouble and they had to start threatening, and then it was over. Thanks to politicians and everybody, I ran for mayor, especially the RCMP. That would show how much power Henry would wield through Abbotsford. Henry used with Mike Sir, the task force, to start circling my house, threatening me for drinking and driving and everything. Mike fled from Abbotsford. They brought junk Colin Watts in. Collins Watts guy smashed my camera, made accusations. Never owned the responsibility, nothing. My boys are very well protected. They're needed. We got old Paul Wanker went with Colin Watts to Souk Mangil to beg after what was done to him, the South Asian attack, and beg that, you know, this police force is raised in Abbotsford. We care about the community. Let me tell you what Abbotsford City said. The RCMP said, stay with it. Stay with it, Mr. Pelican. Stay with it, Abbotsford homeowners, because they know people that are the common, decent people that got families, you know, the voters and everything, will eventually work in these offices and start coming forward. They said, you know, Paul Wanker lives by that Mackenzie Bog. And as an officer of the Abbotsford and saying he cares about the community, when them old people with very small lung capacity were getting deadly sick, he shut his mouth for the establishment. When the smoke was turning the snow black and all the toxics and the illegal stuff, he shut his mouth. When bylaw was an infraction and everything, Paul Walker wasn't the one in that neighborhood that led that group. He knew that that group could be threatened if anybody came forward, so they needed a politician to lead that. When Ross flew to Ottawa with Kelly Green for the dike money and not about with the Indian chief on the Mackenzie Bog. When Abbotsford residents came to me, I had enough with Abbotsford and the threats to open up the door on elite, rich politicians that figured they were above the law. I want to show you something. Even this job site Ron Funka deserved. Today, I want to show you what I did wrong. And I want everybody to look at my mistake. The biggest asshole on the world stage is me. I want to keep that title. I don't want to be known as a soft guy in an office that'll roll over. I want to make sure what took place on ordinary residents never happens again on families. I want to make sure they all can line up in the courtroom and everybody can hear them from witness to witness, and I can watch Colin Watts and his great police force. Please, we need to keep it and everything. When Darren Brown opened the door on the money, on the jobs, on the police building, and the fraud, Henry had to pull in favors. But a man tried to escape an organized crime in ring and an attempted murder and avoid the balance of justice is unacceptable by everybody. You could see it. Colin Watts ain't taking a picture with Henry. Ross ain't taking a picture with Henry. Bruce Banman ain't taking a picture with Henry. Corky Neufeld ain't taking a picture with Henry. Simon Gibson ain't taking a picture with Henry, and the list goes on. Here's a man that they couldn't get away from. The picture photos were all with the great leaders. Nobody. Elected officials will not stand by the officials that were doing this. These were people that took advantage. They weren't playing politics. What they did on Abbotsford residents was unbelievable. People like Darryl Plunkett, the former Speaker of the House, was the one that gave Abbotsford homeowners a voice in the courts. It was John Rostad of the BC Conservatives, Bill Vander Zalm, and many people. So here's what I did wrong. Could you imagine if I would have listened to Henry and been formed by the establishment? Here's what I would have had in my favor. I would have been chosen to be the next mayor because I followed procedure and shut my mouth for the good old establishment. The Chamber of Commerce, Greg Chose, would endorse me with all the chamber people like he did Ross Siemens, giving me the advertising over all the other mayors. Then Gabriel, electoral officer, will give me the electoral list and the by-election list and allow my signs to be everywhere, plastered on buildings and high-rises and everywhere, and block the other candidates for me. The Abbotsford police would run roughshod on all the other candidates, beat them down with the task force and smash them up and threaten them and jail them for me. I'd have Ed Fast endorsing me, helping me as my campaign manager. I'd have Simon Gibson, I'd have Mike DeYoung, I'd have Vicky Hopes running my ads everywhere for only me for being the mayor and promoting how good I am because I listened to Henry and was schooled by Henry. I'll have the Capriccia newspaper owned by Andy and Dave Sadu, the city councillor, running me and posting me in all the South Asians newspaper because Henry gave him the clearance to do it. I'd be in full driver's seats. I have people like Ron Funk of the Verse having my signs hid there and put on all his buildings up there and everything. I'd have my mayor picture put on his building illegally and everything to help him change the zoning. I'd have my signs on Cooper's Farm on the 3,000 against the 3,000 people to help Polygon everywhere. I have my signs on Unitex job sites and I have them all over Jake's contracts trucks, all to help me if I would listen to Henry Braun. The reward would be tremendous, and I would watch all the other candidates scandaled, threatened, everything. Poor Vicky Hopes would have to do her job, Ken would have to do her job, the city bylaws officers would have to go and take all the other candidates down. I'd have campaign people helping me as financial agents that helped them all cheat all for me. Or I could have listened what an Abbotsford judge said with the RCMP. Nobody thinks at the end, Mr. Pelican. Nobody's above the law. Nobody can bend the law. Nobody can use it. Nobody thinks at the end. They only think of what they can get in the front. When the end comes, they stand in my courtroom begging with their lawyers. I'd have Archway Community Services endorsing me, helping me, and flacking me everywhere, and all the debates and everything. I'd have a slam dunk with the establishment. My name would be passed out in Henry's Mennonite Church that we got to get behind our boy. We really need our boy in for development. He does what he needs. I'd have all the councils called Abbotsford First collaborating. I'd have Sandy Blue going against the other mayor saying he grabbed her up the dress and scandal her. I'd have old big Paul Walker and Colin Fox at my foot crawling and begging for everything they need off of me. The rewards are tremendous, only if I would have toed the line and listened. I'd be invited to all the MPs and MLAs meetings and everything else. Geez, it would be unbelievable of how many people I could stand by. I could stand like George Ferguson, fight for my residents and what took place on families. I could stand by the true leaders of Abbotsford, Bruce Bamman, Rianne Gasper, John Rostad, the Bill Vanderzams, the Ted Dykmans, the Marion Moscadams, the Mackenzie Bog, the Cooper Farm people, the Ron Funks neighboring here, and do what was right and go after the organized crime. I could bend over and fall and listen to the Abbotsford police wheeling and keeling, mothers that probably regret they ever gave birth to these officers, and watch them. The manipulation of using the press and everything was overwhelming of what these scumbags and garbage could do. I took to the world stage, knowing what Vicky Hopes did to Abbotsford community and everything, for the pure weight of the justice, our courts, of Ed Henry's attempted murder and everything. I took to the stage because Ron Funk went into the city and bought Ross Siemens' ass and ran his sign here with council for changing of the zoning, which is wrong to all developers in a level playing ground. That is why I took to the stage, because it started in the Premier's office, in the MP's offices, and it came through into municipal politics. And when 3,000 people at Mackenzie Cooper's Farm got blocked, it was no longer a playing ground. When Henry stood up and said Peter Speranese did it. I could be endorsed by the great Mark Warkentine, a man that when the police threw a meeting here by Brad Viss, imagine Brad Viss, he threw a town hall meeting for the community with the police board and to talk about violence and gangs, and nobody showed up. Dumb Ed Fast stood there and dumb Brad Viss, Simon Gibson was running around like a sparrow, and Mark Warkentine faced me and said, "What do you think the chance of the RCMP here coming in?" I said, "Are you stupid, Mark? You're a lawyer." And you imagine that. Imagine me running for the mayorship and I'm in London, England, like Mark Warkentine does, and somebody else gets up and does my speech, takes it over for me, which is a totally illegal, like Abbotsford First, to load me. Imagine me being the mayor, like Mark Warkentine was the city councillor, and running my signs all illegal. There was no ethics or morals. It was pure greed. Carney said it the best, whether you like Carney or not. Chase the money and you'll find the organized crime, and this organized crime took over our city. I knew from Darren Braun, Henry's own son, when he opened the door, there's no way anybody's going to show this as a conspiracy. We're going to forensic audit, and we're going to open the doors of everybody and all these audits on these jobs. When Henry took council in his house, it was Darren Brown that brought the picture called Abbotsford First. They were in his house collaborating, and what they were doing in there, winning the decision for Cooper's Farm, laughing and giggling. Even Les Barkman, the man that's supposed to have some morals, went dead now. He's quiet because I have no respect for him or no morals, knowing that he was a part of this. When Henry Brown stood and scandaled Councillor Mogil during the election, when Mo said there was smoke, there was fire, Henry couldn't sue him for defamation of character or slander because Mo would open up the enclosed meetings and everything Darren Brown showed, scandaling Henry and getting him in trouble. The big trade tycoon, he was in trouble up to his neck because he didn't have any more respect for the law or nothing. He was above it all, and he figured his money and his power could get him. He's running from party to party with Mike DeYoung. You have a leading officials like Ed Fast and Mike DeYoung that covered and directly threatened if you came forward to cover this up. But you have an Abbotsford Police Department that is not allowed to look away from crime or organized crime or threats on anybody and take reports. Didn't. They went upstairs in their little shithole office and they hid, and then they needed the other police forces, and you could see Colin Watts. He's crawling on his belly into every MP's office everywhere. "Please, this is the old dumb chief. Please, this is Colin Watts. Oh, look at Abbotsford. We're talking about gangs and organized crime." We got old Paul Wanker living by the Mackenzie Bog, and the city staff told me how many fractions were ever given on the Mackenzie Bog by Magna or coordinations with the residents there? None. And Paul Walker knew this. Abbotsford had enough. The threats on people's lives. So we got to look at it like this. Not as a conspiracy. You have to look at it like this. How much shit was the Abbotsford police into? How much stuff did they do behind the doors to residents and people? How much stuff did they justify under their filthy garbage company name and their intimidation and their garbage and their manipulation and how they could rig evidence to threaten and bully and garbage? We need back the city auditorium, open mics, and we need to make sure people like Vicky Hopes and people like Ken and people like all these people like Dave Sadu and everybody can't block it with the newspaper. This was uncalled for, it was unjust, it was organized crime, and it needed to come to an end. I don't believe Abbotsford police are dying in the line of duty. I believe that people now realize that the doors were blocked from MLA's to MP's office and went and found these people and said, you know what, we got to even the score. What they did a few weeks ago, pulling me out of the car with all them cop cars and everything, was politically motivated for Henry to make sure I didn't uproot Ian Black's thing, knowing the city staff told me Simon's not allowed to be in there. Simon Gibson's elected city official, and he's endorsing and helping. That's wrong against David Eby. It's wrong against all the other candidates. All these old goozers. You got to come to the conclusion and realize social media, most political platforms now on social media are done by local and young podcast kids that are involved in it. This is what Bruce Banman encouraged young people to get involved in. You could see their podcasts earn the millions of views. Even the one that hosts Dallas Brody, because these young kids are tired and sick and tired of the establishment always, even when they're out of control. Abbotsford wants and deserves Henry Brown in cuffs, and they have to protect him at all costs. This zoning change from 200 to 455 were done by city bureaucrats behind the doors without going back to the city. The city bureaucrats running in the city in the back behind Ross and everything made me a deal. If we help you, Mr. Pelican, you don't mention our names. You used the city against the general community for Ron Funk. You used it with Devon Roy, Pacific Peak Homes of Ed's son-in-law. You used the Cooper's Farm to jinx him. You ran candidates illegally on a developer, which now the mayor owes him, with council, all illegal. Nobody ever seen this. I made it clear when I took this on, I worked for big developers. Peter Wall of Wall Financial built the Wall Center Hotel. I told you Intertech. I told you Cressy. I told you Ledcor. And I told you Mike Dakota of Ani. Mike taught me so much. I did the North Shore Piers with him and everything. So much that it didn't take me 1/100th of a second to walk in the door and know what Henry was doing with his son and collaborating. Even the goof when he stood off as a city mayor and allowed his son to still fulfill his dreams and his jobs as the economic development officer, carrying more weight than his dad. His son also showed the Abbotsford Police Building being extorted money under the $76 million to give it to the contractors. He opened up the doors on Riverside and everything. His own son, Henry Brown, was never, ever gonna beat this, and neither was Ed Fast or nobody. The Abbotsford police, men and women, all have to be named and flushed out, and that is why I stand on social media and say Abbotsford deserves and must have, and we must say every day, we owe the RCMP men and women of Mission a tremendous thanks for our safety, making sure videos were locked in, making sure high dignitaries were brought into witnessing, making sure when we ran to the election, making sure everything that took place, what the Abbotsford men and women were doing, so they can't go to other local police forces. Oh, we're brotherhood. We're the brothers in badges and uniforms. This bulletproof vest and this gun. Oh, we got a police statement. We got an investigation. Have no chance but to fold. The pure thinking of every night that you're going to sleep, knowing that they're targeting your families and residents with lies and accusations and running wild, picking up prostitutes, racing the Dodge Chargers, and framing people or not. But the attack on their South Asians, Councillor Mogel, was uncalled and unjust by the Abbotsford Task Force, Mike Sir. It just didn't lead there. You saw what they did to Suk Mangel when I faced Pierre Poilievre and Clark Freight Race face to face and said, Henry Brown is going to load Mike de Jong in no matter what. The M&Ms, the Mennonite mob, Pierre Poilievre called him, and I said, Abbotsford is willing to go behind Suk Mangel because what took place to Councillor Mogel, the unjustified garbage. But it calls for the federal Conservatives to stand up and start calling out your own bloody MP like Brad Viss and Ed Fast on these attacks. and resonating with voters that this shit is going to be seized and it's going to be taken, and it was done in the name of crime, and we're going to take people like Ron Funk down because he loaded mayors and candidates. This was out of control. When Ross Siemens' dad, Jake Seaman, came to see me, it spelt it all on the wall for the RCMP. Here's a man that you stand on stage and show what his dirty son did and call his son out every day for the attempted murder, the organized crime, the rigging of the election. Sandy Blue, which was his team, said I grabbed her up the dress to wreck somebody's career and life. Barty Sindhu and Rianne Gasper, the MLA for the BC Conservatives, called it all out, said they're going to try to block Mr. Pelican, scandal Mr. Pelican, get him kicked out of the debate to help Ross. We need it. Look what Ross was giving. Sold out, sold out. The Funkstermeister was in the back doors. We have to go after him. But we need the best, the RCMP, and we must go after the city books. And we're going to open them, because it only took place when Henry Brown took office. Henry started originating himself and pointing them job sites. We saw what took place under our farmers. He dismantled the Dike and Ditch Committee. That much information from Darren Braun's mouth. The RCMP never looked at anybody that they were a nutcase or retard. The question was, the RCMP had to start thinking, how many dirty, top, elite Abbotsford police officers are involved? Abbotsford must have the balance of justice brought here, and we must show that people like Mike Serve can't escape this. They're going to be brought back here, skinned down, and be before our courts and face all them witnesses and everybody. And his own man that propped him up. Oh, good Mikey baby. Oh, Mikey baby is the captain. Oh, Mikey baby will do anything for us. Oh, Mikey baby will cover anything. Look at Mikey baby. Face the consequences and face the justice of every person must be held accountable under the law. So I would tell Colin Watts, I'd please go over. I'd please get in your shithole little police vehicle, and I go over to Paul Wanker's house and sit there and say, are these all the neighbors that complained? Are these all the neighbors scared because if anybody come forward, you retaliate? This is what a politician must do. You must stand up and show that why I speak against the Mackenzie Bog is because the neighbors and all the seniors knew how that family was tied to Abbotsford, how Magna, the bylaw officer, owned the enforcer, and the head of the bylaw owned the consolidating company, how that family, that family was well connected, and how that family, maybe they were worried, could threaten, but it was all done illegal. And Kelly Green should have took the chief and stood there, and she didn't, and showed it contaminated to the soil and everything. Instead, Kelly Green had a plan if we could go to Ottawa and beg money. To Colin Watts, I want to make something clear. I took the right road and the high road with Abbotsford residents thanks to the judge, thanks to the RCMP, thanks to Bruce Banman, Rianne Gasper, John Rustad, Bill Van Der Zem, and everything. You took the gutter, and you'll never get out from the gutter, and the guys like you will never, ever, should ever see law enforcement. Crawling in Sook's office was the stupidest, dumbest thing you could have did. You should have came to my house and asked the witnesses. And then you should have supplied me with the guys that said that I was at the bar drinking when you pulled me out of my car. Then you should have went to the multi-billionaire when your officer smashed my phone and camera. Everybody knows it was political, but we gotta save us. If we get let go and we get fired, you can see them on Facebook. You can't fire me or let me go. I'm entitled to a severance package. You're entitled to nothing but a good ass kicking, publicly humiliated, and everybody known who was who and who was doing what. Henry Brown orchestrated this all and carried out them threats, and then decided that he was above the law and he wasn't going to face court, jail, prosecution, or nothing. And these men were under him. The best way I can explain it is go look at the movie Mississippi Burning, and that's why the former Speaker of the House, Darryl Plunkus, called him shit kicker, because he got them words off the Mississippi Burning movie where that sheriff was dirty. And he said, you listen to me, you shit kicker, and you're here. These are the tremendous people that fight for you. These are the people that are here. With these many issues in Abbotsford, you would think that Ian Black, that Peter, and that all these people running for these elections and everything would come to the voters, and they're not. Oh, get me a picture with Henry. Oh, Henry's got money, he can help raise my money. It's going to end, and it's not going to be here. Abbotsford is like the Panama Canal. It's the center. And you got to come through Abbotsford. But Abbotsford is the dumping ground for all the illegal, criminal things and politics and everything to get done. You can see them. They all got to surface back here to Abbotsford. Abbotsford is basically the hub of the setup. And the establishment owned and controlled it here and can work out of the province and everywhere. Even David Eby made it clear. Why are the Liberals taking over the Conservatives? We need to call that out. And Eby knows that the Conservatives and the Liberals getting in there are going to split it. But what Eby should have did with Pamela Alexis is put a stop to this and said, never mind, we're going after clubhouses. That there is illegal. You changed the zoning. You moved the homeless. You hauled rocks in on Gladys Avenue using taxpayers' money. Then you put the homeless in front of the Abbotsford police, which caused the police to go hire lawyers and more taxpayers' money for Funkstermeister. The Funkstermeister, you don't know what the Funkstermeister's capable of. So I would have took the high road. My name would have been front and center on top of the building. But it's election wrong, and it's cruel, and it's illegal. So I took the right road with Abbotsford community. And I stood on the world stage to be the biggest asshole and show people like Colin Watts. Badge don't cover you, buddy. Position don't cover you. The more you hire and the higher ranking are, the more you get your ass kicked and your face kicked. And retaliation on me ain't gonna save your skin, it ain't gonna save nothing. The company's gotta be pushed through the ground, shoved through the ground, and everybody's gotta be let go. And until we can get that done, we need the RCMP to take it over, because these attacks ain't even about running a person out of town. Maybe you should have went over with your police force to the Mackenzie Bog and beat that guy up. That's what you should have maybe went and did. That's what you should have did. Or maybe you should have came down here to Ron Funk and beat Ron Funk up for endangering the people's lives. Or maybe you should have went up to Polygon and beat Polygon up for rigging the decision. That's what you should have did. Maybe somebody would have respected you. That you couldn't do. Weak, pathetic man that figured I run to Souk Man, I'll run to the next politician, I'll run to there. These offices got all intertwined. And Darren Brown showed it. And that is why the former Attorney General and MLA could carry a threat. Cut a deal with Henry. He owns bloody Abbotsford. If you don't cut a deal with Henry, there's going to be consequences. The RCMP, when they heard that, knew that Mike de Jong's ass was owned. I'm live. Abbotsford, British Columbia.